Hey you guys, welcome back to Bath Time Bakery. I hope you're doing well. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel along with hitting that notification bell and selecting all so that you can stay tuned to every update that we have on this channel. Let's go. Alright, love bugs. So in this video I'm not going to be providing you a recipe nor incredibly in-depth detail, but I will make sure to provide some useful tidbits and takeaways for anybody looking to learn how to make bath bombs. But I hope you enjoy watching me make this, but let me tell you what I'm doing here. I'm working on the cupcake base. I already have my baking soda in here, my kaolin clay, my cream of tartar. I also have added cocoa powder in here because I quite frankly appreciate its skin loving benefits. But here I'm going through making sure that there are no more baking soda clumps. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in my fragrance oil and my castor oil and my witch hazel mix that I have here. I prefer witch hazel as a binder over rubbing alcohol as a binder. Rubbing alcohol is great because it completely evaporates. However, for me, for the various recipes that I've tried, my bath bombs are so powdery I can't stand it. Another binder that's fantastic for bath bombs is water, but water you have to be a little careful with because it'll definitely make your bath bombs react. In fact, witch hazel will do it too, just not as quickly. And something that I should add here that I didn't mention just a second ago is that this base right here basically has all of my powders in there and now my liquids, with the exception of citric acid. I like to fully mix everything together with the exception of citric acid and add that last, and that helps me avoid a lot of that fizzy goodness just kind of being dispelled before the bath bomb's even put together. And if you're anything like me, you saw how little quote-unquote liquid I added to that, and that is all that I need for the rest of this bath bomb making process. If I move quickly, you'll see later that I was moving a little too slow. I had to go back and wet it. But I really want to get in there, mix it in very well, and then I'm going to follow that now by adding the citric acid, you guys. And again, once I add that citric acid, I'm going to go in and just mix very well. In a bowl like this, I need to make sure I get the bottom, the corners around the ends, and it is incredibly exhausting mixing or hand mixing this bath bomb mix. So you'll see me switching back and forth. Yes, you can use a stand mixer, or I just didn't feel like pulling mine out. Can I be honest with you guys? Alright, so I just want to show you, this is how you know the mix is ready, because when you squeeze it and drop it down, it stays in place, but it easily crumbles. It's not really too wet at all. We are moving on to filling now our cupcake bases, and I just wanted to show you here that it's important to make sure that along the ends are flat, laid down, and then we're going to work on the center. But the whole goal here, and something not to overlook, is when you're filling in your cupcake bases to make sure that that pressure is applied evenly so that the bottom is also getting filled. So I will add, it's not really as easy as it looks to fill in these cupcakes to make sure that it has enough pressure. And because as you're filling them, you'll see that these particular bases, they'll shift around and move. So another helpful tip you can consider is put them in these muffin holders. And I don't know what you call them, muffin holders, muffin baker, whatever. You see what I've got there on the screen. And press and push, and that actually helps it hold its shape more so you don't constantly feel it moving around as you're packing your cupcake bases. At this point, I recognize that focusing on the camera angle and whatnot and just being preoccupied with making sure I'm capturing everything on camera has slowed me down. So here I'm going to be moving forward with how I normally make them, which is fill them in halfway. Press, 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 press to make sure that the bottom of the cupcake is going to be covered. Then go back and filling in the rest. So here I'm just applying half or a little over half so I can focus on that. But just keep watching. You'll see what I'm doing. Here we go. I really want to make sure you guys see what I'm doing here. So fill it in halfway, push to make sure that you are actually condensing everything at the bottom of the cupcake base. So that's what I'm doing here. I like to weigh my products because I do sell them, and per the FDA, we are required to report the weight of our products. And so what weighing secures for me, it at least guarantees the minimum weight, and that is what I have listed on the labels of all of my products. And just to elaborate a little bit further, so if I put that the finished product is 5 ounces, because everything varies in weight, you could be getting a product that is no smaller than 5 ounces or no lighter than 5 ounces, but it could be anywhere from 5 to even 6 ounces, just depending on how it's filled. So I really just make sure to have that minimum, and the sky's the limit. Something that I want to emphasize here, and I'm going to show you shortly, but when it gets to the top, I want to push it down, but you want to push it down so that there's a little bit of rim left. You don't want it to the very tippy top. If you have a little bit of spacing between the top of the cupcake liner and the actual cupcake base itself, it makes it really easy to pipe and almost gives you a guideline so your piping isn't too wide or really just too wide, because then it becomes a little bit of a nightmare to package. So you'll see later when I'm piping, but it's a great point of reference, not absolutely required. And here is where your girl realized, I'm not liking the way these are setting anymore. So I'm pouring them back in. My batter, I call it batter, was getting a little too dry for comfort, and I didn't want to run the risk of having these cupcakes that are a little too loose and then everything just falls apart. That's no fun. So I'm pouring them back in, and I'm going to go ahead and re-wet my base with a little bit of witch hazel. And when I'm spraying the witch hazel, it's good to just go ahead and mix it all right away, because if it sits too long, especially now with the citric acid in here, the base will react. It'll start to fizz, and we don't want that, you guys. It's time to clean up, don't you think? So because we are handling these cupcakes, you guys, we're getting bath bomb mix all over our gloves, and then we're touching our cupcake bases and cupcake liners. Powders everywhere, and it's important just to take a minute to go ahead and clean that up because I am so stuck on aesthetics, you guys. So I'm just dusting that off, and then any loose bath bomb mix that is in the cupcake, you're just going to go ahead and dump that out because we don't need it, and that is going to be a deterrent when we are piping. If we have all that loose powder, our piping is going to be sticking to that loose powder, and we don't want that. We're going to be moving on to the frosting, but make sure to let it sit long enough to dry. For me, I let it sit for 4 hours. Here's the fun part. I really love making the frosting. I really love piping. It's the funnest part for me when making bath bomb cupcakes. So what I did there was I added all of my ingredients for my liquids for my frosting, and I add the cocoa butter last. I don't quite know why I do that. It doesn't make a difference. Maybe it's because I'm melting it and everything else doesn't need to be melted. Okay, so I answered my own question. But I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together. And we're going to start pouring it into the stand mixer and having it do all of the work for us because quite honestly, this is a little thick. As you'll see shortly, this is a very powdery, all up in the air type of process. So make sure you're wearing a mask to protect your breathing. Make sure, of course, there are no children nor pets in the area. And yes, I do have the stand mixer cover. That really makes no difference. Powder escapes throughout all of it. So just do what you can to protect yourself and those around you. Alright, let's go ahead and pipe. This is so fun for me. Make sure, you guys, I want to stress, if you're making these, make sure there's no loose powder on top. Otherwise, your cupcake frosting will come off. As it relates to my recipe, I am not providing my frosting recipe, and I will tell you a little bit about my journey to creating this recipe. And that started off with not really knowing what to use. I knew that there were certain properties that I wanted that I wasn't getting from the 2-ingredient frosting recipe, which is wonderful to start off with, you guys. I have purchased so many frosting recipes and they didn't work for me. They just didn't. They would seize up too fast. They just didn't work. They wouldn't dry. They would never get hard no matter what people said. Oh, add this, oh, this, da 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 da. Or I'd buy the recipe, I'd reach out to the people who created the recipe. All their troubleshooting tips didn't work for me. I truly believe it's because I live 7,500 feet above sea level. The elevation affects everything. Where I live, there's very little humidity. For the most part, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Might I add, it's gorgeous out here. If you guys ever come through to Santa Fe, you will love it. But that really put me in a position where I had to create my own recipe. And I'll tell you this, I am not moving. Or if I ever move, I am never making bath bombs again because I do not want to deal with figuring it out all over again. Thought it might be nice to switch up the angles so I can show you guys different ways. Actually, this one turned out quite nice, this angle, so I'll try and do it this way next time. But let me know if you guys have a preference and how you want to see things. I'm still learning how to position the camera, and I would like to find one angle where I don't actually have to keep on moving my camera, but I'm not sure that's possible. And you guys have seen me pipe all kinds of different ways today. Some I start right off from the bottom, then I go ahead and swirl all the way to the top. Some of them I do like the bottom layer, go do other ones, then come back and build off of that. Or like this one here, I kind of piped a little bit in the middle and then built on top of that. It really depends on what works for you. When my frosting is a little runny, hasn't set enough yet, piping the lower row or piping the base and then moving on to other cupcakes and then coming back gives it time to set, so that way when I build it up it doesn't kind of fall in itself or just fall off or smush. So it just kind of depends on where you are with regards to your recipe. But this one I actually mixed it a little too long, so it's not as fluid as normal because it's already starting to set. White truffle, raspberry, white chocolate, raspberry, white something. So I wanted to have these white soap embeds, and you know, I wanted them to look like chocolate, and so that's what I have there. Oops, dropped one. I'm just going to keep it pushing. I'll come back and get that later. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in some paper straws. And these are just full straws cut into thirds. And some of them are a little long. So off camera, you guys, I do cut the tops of some of the straws just to shorten them up a little bit. It's daylight savings, you guys. And just like that, it got dark on me. So lighting has changed some. But all I'm doing is just pouring some melt and pour soap that I have colored with brown mica on top of it, just to tie it all in together and make it look like chocolate. And what I'm doing here is selectively adding a little bit more chocolate drizzle anywhere I think that the drizzle looks a little thin or transparent. It's just a yucky look to me, so I want to thicken it up and just add a little bit more. Now, to avoid it altogether, I could have just put more mica in the melt and pour soap, but I didn't this time around. And I hope you can see this. I'm just putting a little bit of gold eco glitter on this right now as well. This is what I have here so far, and I thought I just needed a little bit more shimmer on here. So shortly I will go back and spray everything with a healthy dose of Snowflake Mica by Brambleberry. And so you have a little bit of the gold glitter, and then you also have like the sprinkly shimmery pearly whites. This doesn't have it there yet, but I'm going to go ahead and spray shortly, so then I'll show you guys what that looks like. And here I am. Now I am spraying it with the Snowflake Mica, which is not really coming up on camera as much, but I hope you guys can see now the extra shimmer. So every angle you look at this, there is pow, that shimmer coming to you, which you guys, you can tell my aesthetic is really over the top shimmery. I love it. I love it so much. I may or may not have to let that go. Transitioning from hobby to a business means thinking less of what you like per se aesthetically and trying to capture and create what your customers want after you figure out who your customers are. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching and spending time with me. You take care. Bye-bye.